Most fail not because of a lack of effort. They fail because they mistake the weight of their chains for the gravity of the earth, settling into the numbing rhythm of a life that is comfortable but entirely hollow. In the quiet, rolling, sun-drenched hills of Andalusia, a boy named Santiago lives a life of rhythmic predictability. A shepherd whose existence is measured by the hunger of his flock and the relentless movement of the sun across the sky. He is the archetype of the unawakened hero, moving through a landscape of ancient stones and predictable horizons with a sense of contentment that is actually a form of spiritual sleep. He believes he is the master of his sheep, but in the deepest archetypal truth, he is their servant. He has learned their language so well that he was forgotten his own. He knows where the sweetest grass grows and where the water is clearest, but he has no idea where his own soul is heading or what heights it is meant to scale. The sheep are the living embodiments of the collective unconscious, creatures that demand nothing but food and protection. Entirely devoid of the desire for transcendence or the courage to seek the unknown. They do not look at the stars, they only look at the ground. And Santiago, by virtue of his proximity to them, has begun to do the same. He carries a heavy jacket even in the heat of the Andalusian day. A psychological defense he justifies as preparation for the cold of the night. Failing to realize that the things we carried to protect us often become the very burdens that keep us from the heights of our potential. He carries a book to fill the silence. A library of other men's thoughts used as a shield against the terrifying vastness of his own internal world. He finds himself resting in a ruined church where a massive sycamore tree has burst through the roof of the sacristy. A vivid image of the life force breaking through the rigid, decaying structures of the old world. It is here that the dream arrives, a child leading him to the pyramids of Egypt. This is the call to adventure. The disruptive force of the psyche that demands the individual leave the garden of childhood and enter the wilderness of destiny. The dream is a psychic disturbance. A crack in the ego's armor that lets the light of the self leak through. To understand the dream, he seeks a gypsy, a representative of the intuitive shadow, the marginalized wisdom that the rational world has discarded. She confirms the dream but demands a tithe of the treasure he has not yet found. This is the first lesson of the path. The future demands a sacrifice of the present before it even exists. Frustrated and fearful, he retreats to the village square, where the universe intervenes in the form of Melchizedek, the king of Salem. This is the appearance of the mentor, the wise old man who speaks of the personal legend, the unique destiny that every soul is called to fulfill. The king speaks of the greatest lie in the world, the belief that at some point in our lives, we lose control of what's happening to us and become victims of fate. This is the moment where the narrative of Santiago's life shifts from the passive to the heroic. The king explains that when a person truly desires something, the entire universe conspires to help them achieve it. A principle of synchronicity that bridges the gap between the inner world and outer reality. To move forward, Santiago must perform a ritual of divestment. He must sell his sheep. He must kill the version of himself that seeks comfort above all else. Selling the flock is a symbolic death of the ego's security. He is no longer a shepherd, but a seeker. He stands on the shores of Africa, looking back at the familiar hills of Spain, realizing that he has crossed the threshold into the unconscious. In Tangier, he is immediately met by the shadow. He is robbed of his gold by a friend and left with nothing in a marketplace of foreign tongues and unfamiliar gods. This is the Negredo phase, the blackening of the soul where everything is lost so that the essential can be found. He sits in the dirt and weeps, experiencing the crushing weight of the abyss. This is where most fail. They mistake the first challenge for a sign of failure rather than a sign of initiation. But he chooses to see himself not as a victim, but as an adventurer. He finds work with a crystal merchant, a man who has lived for 30 years in a state of stagnant hope, polishing glasses that represent his own unlived potential. The merchant prefers the safety of a dream, visiting Mecca, to the risk of its realization. For a year, Santiago works, cleaning the crystal and the merchant's soul. He brings the energy of the Puritanis, the revitalizing force of growth. And in doing so, he learns the language without words. He discovers that the way he handles a piece of crystal is the same way he handles his own destiny. He saves enough money to return to Spain as a success. But the personal legend is a jealous master. He realizes that the years in the crystal shop were not a detour, but a laboratory of the spirit where he learned the patience of the stone and the clarity of the glass. He decides to join a caravan heading into the deep Sahara. He is now ready to enter the desert, the ultimate symbol of the vast. Stripping unconscious where there is no room for masks, the transition from the shepherd boy to the alchemist's apprentice is not merely a change of scenery, but a profound psychological transmutation. After a year in the crystal shop, Santiago has mastered the art of beginning luck, that initial favor the universe grants to those who dare to follow their hearts. However, the path to the soul is never a straight line, it is a spiral that leads inward through layers of resistance and fear. The crystal shop served as a necessary albedo phase, a whitening or purification where the boy learned that wealth is not just coins in a pocket, but the ability to manifest one's internal state into the external world. He learned that crystal, like the human spirit, is fragile yet capable of holding incredible light if it is kept clean of the dust of stagnation. The merchant, his mentor in this phase, acted as the archetypal false prophet or the stagnant king, a man who possessed the map to his destiny but refused to walk the road. Through the merchant's fear, Santiago learned the most provocative lesson of all, that the fear of suffering is often worse than the suffering itself. He realized that the merchant's unlived life was a far greater tragedy than the boy's experience of being robbed in the marketplace. This analytical realization provided him with the spiritual fuel to reject the comfort of a stable income and a predictable future. He understood that staying in the shop would mean becoming another glass on the shelf, beautiful, perhaps, but ultimately static and hollow. When he finally joins the caravan, he is entering the massa confusa, the chaotic mixing of elements that precedes true transformation. The desert is the great stripper of the non-essential. It demands a level of presence that is impossible in the gardens of Andalusia or the shops of Tangier. In the desert, the boy meets the Englishman, a figure representing the intellectual logos, the seeker who tries to find the great work in the pages of books rather than in the silence of the dunes. The Englishman carries a little library on the back of his camel, hoping that the secrets of alchemy can be distilled into a series of logical steps or chemical formulas. He is the modern mind, desperate to categorize the numinous, to name the unnameable, and to avoid the terrifying direct experience of the divine. Santiago, by contrast, begins to listen to the desert. He watches the camels, he feels the wind, and he observes the shifting patterns of the sand. He is learning the language of the world, a pre-verbal communication that exists in the heart of all things. The desert is not a wasteland to him, it is a living entity, a mirror of his own internal vastness. As the caravan moves deeper into the Sahara, the boy begins to perceive the signs that the Englishman misses. He sees the flight of the hawks, he hears the whispers of the sand, and he feels the pulse of the soul of the world. This is the development of the intuitive function, the ability to see the patterns beneath the surface of reality. He realizes that everything is one, that the stone and the star are made of the same primordial substance. The Englishman remains frustrated, his books offering no comfort against the heat and the silence. This contrast highlights the central tension of the spiritual quest. The mind wants to understand, but the soul wants to be. Santiago is learning to be. He is moving away from the thinking function and into the feeling and intuitive functions, allowing the desert to hollow him out so that he can become a vessel for the alchemist's fire. The external journey across the sand is a reflection of the internal journey through the layers of the ego. The boy is shedding his Andalusian identity, his crystal shop identity, and his intellectual identity. He is becoming a point of awareness, a locus of consciousness that is finally ready to meet the master. The desert is preparing him for the Negredo of the spirit, the moment where all certainties will be incinerated, leaving only the golden essence of the self. He is no longer looking for treasure, he is becoming the treasure. The dunes ahead are not obstacles, but the waves of a vast psychological ocean that he must learn to navigate. He stands at the edge of the world, a boy with no sheep and no shop. Yet he feels a sense of power that he never knew in the safety of the fold. He has begun to read the language without words, and the universe is starting to whisper back. Every grain of sand is a word, every gust of wind is a sentence, and he is finally learning how to read the story of his own life. The caravan moves toward the oasis of Al-Fayoum, a place of water and life that will act as the final test of his resolve. He does not yet know that the oasis is where he will meet the anima, the feminine soul image that will either bind him to the earth or inspire him to the stars. He does not yet know that the alchemist is watching him from the shadows of the palms. He only knows that he must keep moving, for the desert is a jealous master that does not allow for rest. He is a seeker on the path to the pyramids, and every step is a word in the personal legend he is writing with his own feet. The shimmering mirage of Al-Fayoum materializes not as a trick of the thirsty eye but as a manifestation of the soul's desperate need for sanctuary. An island of vibrant green amidst an ocean of unforgiving yellow. It is here, within this terrestrial heaven of 50,000 date trees and 300 wells, that Santiago enters the refugium. A psychological space where the hero is offered a reprieve from the calcinatio of the desert sun. For the seeker, however, the oasis is the most dangerous of all trials, the limbus where the fire of ambition is tempted by the cool water of comfort. You have stood at this crossroads in your own life. Have you not? It is that seductive plateau where the struggle finally yields a harvest, where the pressure of the journey subsides, and a quiet, domestic peace whispers that the pyramids are too far, that the dream was just a youthful folly, and that the shade of the palms is enough. To stay is to choose a slow, spiritual stagnation, a regression into the safety of the known that eventually rots the heart from the inside out. But Santiago's heart is still tuned to the frequency of the personal legend, and it is at the well of the oasis that he encounters the anima in her most potent and transformative form. Fatima appears not merely as a woman, but as a sacred direction, a personification of the feminine soul image that acts as a bridge to the divine. When he looks into her eyes, the language of the world becomes a physical sensation, a realization that love is the primordial force that binds the soul of the world together. This is the conjunction, the meeting of the solar and lunar principles within the psyche. He believes he has found his destination, yet he is about to learn that true love is never an anchor that keeps the hero in port, but a sail that catches the wind of destiny. Fatima is the elevated anima, a daughter of the desert who knows that she cannot possess the wind. She tells him to go, for she would rather have a husband who is a traveler of the stars than a man who remains by her side while his spirit dies of resentment. This is a provocative challenge to your own understanding of devotion. Do you love to possess, or do you love to empower? Most find their sanctuary and never leave, turning their Fatima into a jailer of their own potential. The Englishman, meanwhile, finds his alchemist, but the encounter is a devastating blow to the intellectual ego. The master does not offer him a book or a formula, he simply tells him to go and try to turn lead into gold. This is the failure of the logos when confronted with the experience. The Englishman has spent his life accumulating the map, but he is terrified of the territory. He represents the tragedy of the scholar who knows the theory of fire but has never felt the heat. Santiago, however, is beginning to move beyond the need for maps. He spends his days in the desert, not reading, but observing the signs. He watches two hawks in the sky, and in an instant of participation mystique, his consciousness merges with the soul of the world. He sees a vision of an army attacking the oasis, a psychic intrusion of the shadow that threatens the peace of the refugium. He has learned to read the language without words, and he risks his life to bring this prophecy to the tribal chieftains. He has moved from the state of the poor, the boy who follows, to the state of the prophet, the one who acts on the unseen truth. The chieftains, bound by tradition, agree to arm the oasis, but they warn him that if the vision is false, his life will be the price. This is the double bind of the heroic path. Once you speak the truth of the soul, you must live or die by it. The vision proves true, the oasis is saved, and the boy is rewarded with gold and status. But the reward is another trap, another reason to stay, another layer of lead to weigh down his wings. It is in the silence after the battle that the alchemist truly manifests, not as a teacher, but as a warrior on a white horse, a shadow against the sun, the hierophant who guards the threshold of the final initiation. He does not come with platitudes, he comes with a sword at the boy's throat. Who is it that dared to read the flight of the hawks? He demands, testing the boy's courage. He knows that the personal legend requires a fortitude that surpasses the fear of death. He tells Santiago to sell his camels and buy a horse. The camels are treacherous and will die without a warning, while a horse will tell you when it is tired. This is a lesson in the psychological endurance of the journey. You must know your own vehicle, your own ego, and its limits. They leave the oasis, leaving Fatima and the comfort of the palms behind, and enter the deep, silent desert where the grand work truly begins. This is the descent into the abyss, the final stripping of the social self. The alchemist speaks rarely, for he understands that the boy must now learn to communicate with his own heart. The journey into the deep desert is a profound exercise in shadow integration. The alchemist tells the boy that his heart is a traitor, but that he must listen to it anyway. The heart is full of fear, full of memories of Andalusia, full of the desire to return to Fatima. It is the repository of all the boy's shadow qualities, his cowardice, his attachment, his longing for safety. But the alchemist explains that you must know your heart so well that it can never surprise you with a betrayal. You must walk through the fire of your own anxieties until the fear of suffering is recognized as being far worse than the suffering itself. This is the key to psychological invulnerability. When you accept the possibility of your own destruction, the world no longer has any power over you. You are in this furnace now, aren't you? You are listening to the voices that tell you to turn back, the voices that list your failures, the voices that whisper that you are not enough. The alchemist does not tell you to silence these voices, he tells you to master them by knowing them. They are captured by a military tribe, a manifestation of the destructive shadow that seeks to consume the light of the seeker. The alchemist, in a move of supreme provocative wisdom, tells the tribesman that the boy is an alchemist who can turn himself into the wind. He gives away the boy's gold, the literal and symbolic fruit of his labor, to buy 3 days of time. This is the Athanor, the alchemical furnace where the temperature is raised to the breaking point. Santiago is forced to perform a miracle or die. He has no books, no formulas, and no mentor to hold his hand. He is alone with the elements. For 3 days, he meditates on the vastness of the Sahara. On the final day, he stands on a cliff and begins a dialogue with the universe. He speaks to the desert, the mother of his struggle. But the desert does not know love. He speaks to the wind, the spirit that moves through all things. But the wind does not know the purpose of the work. Finally, he speaks to the Sunday, the divine intelligence, the source of all light. But even the sun, in its majestic isolation, does not understand the hand that wrote all. The boy realizes that the soul of God is his own soul, and that he can perform miracles because he is a part of the Creator. This is the ultimate conjunctio, the realization that the macrocosm and the microcosm are one and the same. He begins to pray without words, a prayer that is a pure vibration of the self. The wind begins to blow with a ferocity that threatens to erase the very memory of the camp. The simoom rises, a psychic storm that dissolves the boundaries between the boy and the cosmos. He disappears in a swirl of dust and reappears on the other side of the camp. He has turned himself into the wind. He has achieved the rubedo, the reddening, the final stage of the alchemical process where the human and the divine are fused into a single, golden reality. The tribesmen, terrified by the numinous power they have witnessed, release the travelers. They have seen a man who is no longer a man, but a force of nature. This is the result of the personal legend when it is followed to the very edge of the abyss. The alchemist takes him to a monastery, where he turns lead into gold one last time, providing the boy with the means for his final journey to the pyramids. He tells him a story of a Roman centurion whose servant was healed by Jesus, a reminder that every person, no matter how small their role, is a part of the universal history. The alchemist leaves him, for the final step must always be taken alone. The hero must face his destiny without the support of the mentor, for the mentor is now internalized. Santiago reaches the pyramids. He sees them in their silent, eternal majesty, the omphalos of the world, and he begins to weep. He is at the destination of his dream, the physical center of his personal legend. He begins to dig, his hands bleeding, his heart pounding with the proximity of the treasure. He digs all night, but he finds nothing but sand. Then, A group of refugees from the war appears. They beat him. They steal his gold. And they mock his quest. This is the final strip search of the soul. The moment where the universe takes everything from the hero to see if the gold of his spirit remains. One of the thieves, in a moment of supreme synchronicity, tells Santiago that he also had a dream once, a dream of a ruined church in Spain where shepherds sleep with their sheep. The thief mocks the boy for traveling across a desert for a dream, while he was too smart to do the same. This is the ultimate revelation. The shadow has delivered the final key. The treasure was never in Egypt, it was back where the journey began, under the sycamore tree in the sacristy of the ruined church. But if the boy had never left Andalusia, he would never have had the eyes to see the gold. He would have lived and died a shepherd, sleeping on a fortune he could never possess. The journey was not about the destination, it was about the alchemist he became along the way. He returns to Spain, to the very church where he first dreamed. He digs beneath the roots of the sycamore tree and finds the chest of Spanish gold, the jewels, and the precious masks. But the gold is merely the objective correlative of his internal transformation. He can now speak to the wind. He can read the flight of the hawks. And he knows that the soul of the world is his own. The circle is complete. The Ouroboros has bitten its own tail. And the boy is home. But he is no longer the boy who left. He is the master of the two worlds. The one who has reconciled the earth and the sky. He looks toward the east, smelling the scent of Fatima on the wind. And he knows that he is coming for her. The quest is over. And the quest is just beginning. For the great work is a cycle that never ends. The dust of the pyramids still clings to Santiago's skin. A gritty, physical reminder of the vast distance between the boy who wept in the marketplace of Tangier and the man who now stands on the brink of a final, world-altering revelation. He has left the desert behind. But the desert has not left him, it has carved its vastness into his spirit, stripping away the Andalusian shepherd and replacing him with a vessel capable of holding the soul of the world. As he crosses the threshold of the sea once more, returning to the rolling hills of Spain, he is no longer moving through a physical landscape, but through a psychic one where every stone and every breeze vibrates with the language of the world. He arrives at the ruined church where it all began, the place where he once slept among his sheep, dreaming of a treasure that existed 1,000 miles away. The sycamore tree still bursts through the roof of the sacristy, its branches reaching for the stars. Yet it no longer looks like a mere plant, it has become the axis mundi, the vertical line connecting his earthly beginnings to his celestial destiny. He begins to dig at its roots, his hands moving with a rhythmic, grounded certainty that only comes from having faced the simoom and survived. And there, buried beneath the roots that once served as his pillow, he finds it, the chest of Spanish gold, the jewels, the ancient masks encrusted with precious stones. But as the lid creaks open and the morning light dances across the coins, a profound silence settles over him. He does not feel the frantic greed of the boy he was, he feels the serene detachment of the master he has become. He realizes that the gold in the chest is merely the objective correlative of the grand work he has performed upon his own soul. If he had found this treasure a year ago, it would have been his destruction. He would have used it to buy more sheep, to build a bigger house, and to insulate himself from the very call that saved him. Now, the gold is merely a tool, a physical manifestation of a spiritual victory. He realizes that the thief at the pyramids was the most important guide of his entire journey. For the thief's mockery was the universe's way of pointing him home. But the journey to Egypt was not a mistake, it was the alchemical distillation required to turn the lead of his unawakened life into the gold of a realized spirit. You are standing at the roots of your own sycamore tree right now, clutching the shovels of your ambition and wondering why the ground remains so hard. You have been taught to look at the pyramids, to chase the horizon, and to believe that the treasure is always over there, in a different city, a different job, or a different person. But the most provocative lesson of this story is that the personal legend is a circle, not a line. You must travel the world to find out that the world is within you. You must risk everything to discover that you already possessed the very thing you were looking for. But you lacked the eyes of the alchemist to see it. How many times have you ignored the treasure under your own feet because it didn't look like gold? How many times have you cursed the thieves in your life, The people who robbed you of your comfort, without realizing that they were the ones handing you the map to your true self? The alchemy of life is not about creating something new, it is about transmuting your perception so that the mundane is revealed as the miraculous. Every obstacle you face is a part of the grand work, a necessary friction designed to burn away the lead of your ego until only the golden essence remains. You are afraid to leave the sheep because the sheep are safe. But safety is the most expensive prison in the world. It costs you your life. Santiago takes a small piece of the gold and remembers the monk, the alchemist, and the merchant. But his heart is already moving toward the Levant. The wind begins to blow, the Levanta. The wind that carries the scent of Africa and the memory of a woman who waited without possession. He knows that Fatima is there, at the oasis. And he knows that she is the anima who completed his soul. He realizes that his journey was never about the gold coins, but about the language without words that allowed him to speak to the sun and the wind. He has achieved the unus mundus, the state of being where he and the world are a single, breathing organism. This is the ultimate meaning that the book intends to convey, that the universe is not a bystander in your life, but a co-conspirator. It speaks to you through dreams, through signs, and even through catastrophes, constantly urging you to fulfill the personal legend that was written for you before the stars were born. The soul of the world is nourished by people's happiness, and also by unhappiness, envy, and jealousy. To realize one's destiny is a person's only real obligation. Everything is one, and when you want something, all the universe conspires in helping you to achieve it, not because it wants to give you a prize, but because it wants to experience its own glory through you. You are the alchemist of your own experience, and your life is the great work in progress. The treasure is not the gold at the end of the road, the treasure is the road itself, and the person you become while walking it. You must learn to listen to your heart, for it is the only compass that can navigate the soul of the world. You must learn to see the signs, for they are the alphabet of the divine. And above all, you must never stop dreaming, for dreams are the language of God. When he speaks in our language can interpret what he has said, but if he speaks in the language of the soul, it is only you who can understand. This realization, whispered by the wind as it brushes against the ancient stones of the ruined church, marks the final dissolution of the boy's dependency on external masters. Santiago is no longer a student, he is the embodiment of the lesson. As his fingers brush against the cold, hard reality of the Spanish gold coins, he understands that the true alchemy was never the transmutation of metal, but the transmutation of his own will. The sycamore tree, which once provided a mere shadow for a sleeping shepherd, now stands as a monument to the axis mundi, the vertical intersection where the divine meets the mundane. Every gem he pulls from the earth is a solidified memory of a desert trial, a crystallized moment of courage that had to be earned in the furnace of the Sahara. This is the rubedo, the reddening, the final stage of the alchemical process where the spirit is perfectly fixed into the material world. The treasure is not a reward for the journey, it is the physical manifestation of the fact that the journey occurred. You must understand this. The universe does not give prizes to the stagnant. It only reveals its hidden wealth to those who have become vessels capable of carrying it. Santiago's hands, once soft from the wool of sheep, are now calloused and scarred. Yet they hold the jewels with a grace that no shepherd could ever possess. This is the archetypal return, where the hero brings the boon back to the land of his birth, but he returns as a stranger to his former self. He sees the hills of Andalusia not as a limit, but as a starting point. The gold in his lap is heavy, yet he has never felt lighter, for he has shed the ultimate burden, the fear of his own destiny. The analysis of this final stage reveals a profound psychological truth. The personal legend is a circular path that requires the seeker to travel to the edge of the world only to find that the center was always under their feet. This is the paradox of individuation. Santiago had to experience the Negredo of the robbery in Tangier, the albedo of the crystal shop, and the sitanitas of the desert visions to develop the eyes of the alchemist. Without the journey, the gold under the sycamore tree would have remained invisible to him, even if he had slept there for 100 years. The treasure is only gold because of the consciousness of the one who finds it. In your own life, you are often surrounded by the very resources you need to fulfill your purpose. Yet you remain in a state of spiritual poverty because you have not yet undergone the descent. You are looking for a miracle to change your circumstances, failing to realize that the only miracle required is the change in your own vibration. The story of the boy and the treasure teaches us that the world is a mirror. If you look at it with the eyes of a shepherd, you see only grass. If you look at it with the eyes of an alchemist, you see the soul of the world in every grain of sand. The grand work is the constant effort to maintain this clarity, to refuse the seduction of the comfortable life in favor of the legendary life. As the morning sun rises over the Spanish fields, Santiago hears a voice on the wind. It is the alchemist, laughing from a distance that no longer exists. For the master is now a permanent resident of the boy's psyche. The alchemist knew that the boy would find the gold, just as he knew the boy would have to be beaten at the pyramids to find the truth. This is the shadow as a catalyst. The refugees who robbed Santiago at the destination were not obstacles, they were the final messengers of the Anima Mundi. Their violence was the friction required to trigger the final revelation. In the archetypal journey, the enemy is often the one who holds the final key to the kingdom. By mockery, the thief revealed the location of the treasure. By suffering, the boy earned the right to possess it. This is the ultimate synchronicity. The realization that there are no accidents in a universe that is a single, breathing organism. Everything, the betrayal, the war, the thirst, and the jewels, is a part of the great embroidery of the soul. You must learn to bless your thieves, for they are the ones who force you to look where you have never looked before. The wind shifts, and now it carries the scent of the desert, the smell of dust and date palms, and the unmistakable perfume of Fatima. Santiago realizes that his personal legend is not complete without the union of opposites. He must return to the oasis, not as a seeker, but as a master of the two worlds. Fatima is the anima, the feminine soul image that provides the emotional and spiritual gravity for his existence. His love for her is no longer a form of lunar dependency, a need to be completed by another. It has become a solar radiance, a shared participation in the glory of the soul of the world. She waited for him because she knew that a man who abandons his dream is a man who can never truly love. By leaving her, he proved he was worthy of her. By returning to her, he completes the mysterium conjunctionis, the sacred marriage of the spirit and the earth. This is the final message of the book, that the fulfillment of destiny leads not to isolation, but to a deeper, more profound connection with all of life. The treasure is shared, the love is liberated, and the boy is home. To read The Alchemist is to undergo a psychological sublimatio, a raising of the spirit from the leaden weight of everyday anxiety into the golden atmosphere of universal purpose. The core message is a provocative demand for total individual responsibility. It posits that the universe is not an indifferent machine, but a living entity that responds to the intensity of our desire. The language of the world is available to anyone who has the courage to listen, but it requires the silencing of the ego's constant demands for safety. The book teaches that everything is one, and that the smallest action, the cleaning of a glass, the watching of a hawk, the digging of a hole, is a cosmic event. To live without a personal legend is to be a ghost in one's own life, moving through a world of signs without ever learning to read. But to follow the call is to enter into a partnership with the divine, where every obstacle is a lesson and every failure is a preparation. The treasure is waiting under your sycamore tree, but the universe will never give you the shovel until you have proven you are willing to walk to the pyramids. The true meaning of Santiago's journey is the discovery of the self as the ultimate alchemist. We are all born with the philosopher's stone within us, but it is buried under layers of social conditioning, fear, and the greatest lie of fate. The work of life is the exfoliation of these layers, the stripping away of the shepherd's jacket to reveal the king's heart. The book is a manual for the heroic life, a life that refuses to settle for the grass of the field when the gold of the stars is available. It is a reminder that the soul of the world is nourished by our happiness and that our only true obligation is to realize our own destiny. When we do, we don't just change our own lives, we change the frequency of the entire world. We become the tincture that turns the lead of existence into the gold of meaning. The gold coins under the tree are just a sign. The real treasure is the fact that the boy can now look at a grain of sand and see the entire history of the creation. As you conclude this narrative experience, you must face the reflection in the mirror of your own soul. Are you still tending sheep that do not belong to you? Are you still polishing crystals in a shop that feels like a tomb? Or are you ready to listen to the levanter, the wind that is even now whispering the location of your own treasure? The desert is vast, the thieves are many, and the pyramids are far, but the universe has already conspired in your favor the moment you decided to want. The grand work is calling. The fire is lit. The vessel is ready. The only question that remains is whether you have the courage to be the gold you were always meant to be. The journey is a circle. The end is the beginning. And the master is the one who finally realizes that there is nowhere to go because the destination is the one who is walking. Your life is the alchemy that the universe has been waiting for since the dawn of time.